In this episode, we talk about the overview of how we actually run our call or our demo or our face-to-face presentation to gain more trust with the client and actually close the deal, and what some of our options are when closing the deal, especially if we're a young sales organization or growing company.
Are you listening?
If you guys want to just throw questions at me.
Damn.
Last week we talked about how to find the right prospects and also how to reach out to those prospects in a very unique way to evoke questions from the prospect that we believe could lead them to want to speak to us about our product or our service. And just as a quick update, the HireKeep sales team put together a list or a line of questioning that was related to our industry, and we've been doing our outreach at a maximum of 2 lines in an email to the prospects, and the results have actually been overwhelming. Not all the responses obviously are positive, meaning they show interest, but the amount of responses have increased, and from a very limited test of about 3 days, we were able to schedule 7 demos with prospects, which is probably the highest conversion I've ever seen. So check out Paul Talk, 3rd episode, where I discuss exactly how you can reach out to the prospect and what the strategy is, and then put that together for whatever industry you're working in and to target your ideal prospect. Now that we've gotten to establish how do we find the people and the ideal companies that we want to target, and have done some outbound reach out, we've actually scheduled a demo. What happens next, right? And a lot of startups and even growing companies that are a little bit more established have this issue, and it's called authority, and that's what I call it. And you traditionally want to buy from brands that you know. And I love to use this example of going into a store and looking at the best TV that you've ever seen. The quality looks great, and as you look around, your eyes tend to go towards what is the brand. Do I know what brand this TV is? And if the brand was Yakoshiba, for example, and if it was an incredible TV, even a TV that's crappier, but a Samsung, you would be leaning more towards the Samsung TV than you would be for the Yakoshiba, even though that may be a better product for you. So as growing companies or startups that are developing tech and they want to sell their product in the marketplace, everybody wants to be the Samsung, but unfortunately, you're the Yakoshiba for a while. So what I'm going to talk about today is how to sell as the Yakoshiba of the market until you gain enough traction and you gain enough labels to then become the Samsung, right? When myself and my sales team think about selling our product, I'm always considering 3 things. The first thing I want to consider is, what is my approach going to be? And the number one approach that I usually like to take in our case is to ultimately sell or expose the industry problem, okay? And I'll talk more about that in a second. The second thing that I want to do is I want to be direct about my output, my pricing, and everything else. I don't want to beat around the bush. I don't want to start high and go low, as some people want to, test the market. I believe that, that's not a good approach because it doesn't show stability. And I think the third thing is actionable next steps, and within that same realm, what I like to call what's it going to take. Okay, so let's start with the first thing. Okay, we talked about selling the industry problem. A lot of times when you're selling a product or a service, you want to show value in what you're offering, and I totally get that. That's the initial way that you want to go. We're great because of this. We've done work with these types of clients. This is the data that we have and all this stuff. But unfortunately, that doesn't really spark a lot of interest from my experience from the prospect. Instead, what we like to do is we like to expose what is the problem with in our business, for example, recruiting, right? The state of recruiting. What's wrong with the structure or the design of the industry, and what kind of business is being done in the industry, and why does it hurt companies, or why does it hurt, in our case, candidates, right? Because we're a B2B and a B2C business. So for us, we can expose a tremendous amount of problems. And so step one is always to identify what are the problems in the industry that you're solving. And as you expose those problems and you're talking to the prospect, you want to kind of gain their confirmation that they realize and they understand and that they agree that these issues exist. The key here is, and why this works is very simple. It is because when you solve an industry problem or are attempting to solve an industry problem, when the company buys your product, they feel like they are contributing to the solution of this problem. And so you're not selling your company, you're selling the big picture, right? You're selling exactly what it is that you want to do to change the state of something that will help many, many different companies, and they have a chance to invest into that, and they will gain a benefit because you're solving a problem that they have, but you're not directly positioning it as a problem for them. You're positioning it as a problem for everyone. Nobody wants to buy when they feel, well, not nobody, but you get it. Most people don't want to buy when they feel like they're the only ones having the problem. But if you expose it and you say that's okay, everybody's having this problem. We have research that shows that this is a problem in the industry. This investment will solve this problem for you, as it has for so many. You get a lot more buying signals during the call, and it's a lot easier to then segue into the second part of the conversation where you are confident and direct about your business. So that takes us to step two. The craziest part about being in business, and when you're a young entrepreneur, when you're in sales in general, is having that confidence behind your product, knowing full well that there's always that risk. What if we don't deliver? What if we don't perform? What do we do? How do we get this prospect to invest in us? And the truth is, there's no real way except believing in what you do and believing in yourself and busting your ass and doing whatever the fuck it takes to get the job done for the client, because that hustle is the only thing that's going to get that person to want to buy from you. It's the same thing as, trying to raise money when you're talking to an investor, right? The biggest problem is, how do I get the investor to believe enough in me, especially with the initial pitches where it's really a vision pitch because you're kind of selling yourself. So you're selling yourself and your company, and so you, no matter what happens, you want to make sure that you're extremely direct with what you can deliver and what you charge for that. And then you can segue that into a line of questioning, and I'll talk about questions in a later episode, how to evoke buying questions out of prospects. I think it's extremely important, which is part of that protocol. But I think right now what we're doing with this episode is just kind of setting up the groundwork for the appropriate call, right? Or conversation or face-to-face meeting. Okay? And then as far as pricing goes, as soon as you start to talk pricing, that's where a lot of reluctancy occurs, right? That's where you get a lot of pushback, right? You start to get a lot of questions regarding, what they get for that specific package, or their reluctancy to pay up front without seeing results. And so that third part is this big risk that we take. And some people will disagree with me, and again, feel free to comment in the section below. But my belief is that there's two types of revenue that you can gain. The first type is direct revenue. I get this money and it's mine, okay? There's a second type of revenue that you can get. It's a little bit more risky, but it's extremely powerful if you know you can deliver, or if you believe strongly that you can deliver. And let me explain. This revenue is called liability revenue. And liability revenue is revenue contingent upon an action, a result of some kind that is agreed upon between the two parties. Now, a lot of people are reluctant to do a deal that involves liability revenue because they risk losing the deal, because traditionally those deals those deals have some kind of guarantee behind them of performance or of results. I like those types of deals because it pushes myself and my team to perform at a much, much higher level, because we then know if we don't deliver, we're gonna lose that client, or we're gonna have to refund that client. And it lights a fire under our asses to go out and do it, but you have to make sure you mitigate that risk. And let me give you an example. If we have a heavy, and again, I relate this to our business, but if you have traction in a certain market, let's just say that your business delivers either a service, or maybe you're in a recruiting space, or whatever it is, and you have traction, or you do something really well, and you've identified that that's a big problem for the prospect. In those cases, we would evaluate our market, see what we have that the client actually needs, what are our chances of delivering a positive result for that client, and then locking down a deal that ultimately turns that liability revenue into actual revenue, into real revenue for our business. I'll give you an example for a client that we just did a deal with. We're launching in the West Coast market, and we've now started to slowly scale out our outreach there. And as we start to gain traction with our candidates there, a deal came about where a young company was unwilling to take a risk because they didn't know about us. They believed in our vision, but they were treading lightly. And so what we did in that case is we took a liability revenue deal that involved us signing a contract that said if we can deliver them a successful hire, they will then enroll in a specific plan in our service. Now remember, this is not a per hire type of deal. It's not traditional, but it is saying, look, if I can actually show you that we can get this done, then you will invest into a deal with us that will last for a 12-month period. What have I done here? Well, I've set myself up for a position that if we do deliver, I now gain a client for 12 months, and that stickiness, that retention's there. If we don't deliver, there's no sour taste because they walk away from the deal and they are safe, and we walk away from a deal knowing maybe that market isn't the market we should do this in. So everything is sort of trial and error, guys, and you have to really think about what you can do before you jump on these things. But most of the time, a liability deal really works well for both parties, simply because you can walk away amicably and you're not really butting heads. It's almost like a test of the waters for you both, in hopes that you can deliver for the client. So that's our flow of how we position ourselves on a phone call in a very general way. And we can break these pieces down even further as I talk through some of the things that I mentioned in the previous episodes and going into the future episodes. And I hope that you guys can poke questions at me, and I'd love to see what the feedback is on this type of approach, because I know that it's sometimes can be risky, and I know that some people are pretty reluctant to jump into it. So that's it for this episode. Thanks a lot for tuning in, guys. Again, ask me questions, direct questions in the comments below. Share this thing with someone that you believe this could be valuable for, and we'll keep the episodes coming. Happy to jump on at any time with mini episodes if I feel the question is compelling enough to get answered right away. Thanks, guys.